you want to go next, Ryan, with some issue that you think will have a big impact on?
Sure. I guess I'd say the whole housing boom in Ann Arbor has been kind of, you know, I don't know if we took the pulse of it yet, but there are 2,300 beds, you know, about to, you know, including 2 projects we've already seen developed and 6 more in the works. There are 2,300 beds coming online in the downtown. That's a significant influx of new apartments, and a lot of that is student high-rises.
Yes.
And you're seeing these coming at a time when the university is putting downward pressure on student enrollment growth. I think the undergrad class was about 27,400 this year, and you know, Mary Sue Coleman says we want to see that down around 25,000 next year. So I think we're going to have to ask if the market can bear and support all of this new development. We're seeing, you know, more apartment projects coming forward, and even spilling into the downtown. I wouldn't want to leave out the fact that we had City Place, the 144-bed project that is in a near downtown neighborhood, and that raises a lot of questions about you know, the spillover.
That was the demolition. They can bring up that brings up the demolition of the 7 homes on Fifth Avenue. Yes, and whether that was really a needed thing, a needed development, right? Yes. Yeah.
So I know that was a mouthful, but all those, I think those are all kind of correlate and are linked together, and will lead to some significant discussions in 2012 about what we want downtown, what we want more of, what we want that we don't have, what are we missing. And Susan and the DDA are kicking off you know, this Midtown Discovery project, which is master planning a certain core area of the downtown that's ripe for some transformation.
Right, right. We'll kind of find out what density means, or what, when we talk about density, what are we really, you know, talking about, I think. Jane?
In terms of density?
In terms of this, you know, this topic about the housing growth.
Yeah, I was curious to see where Ryan was headed with that, and I concur with, you know, the question that you posed. You know, we'll see if the market will support the development, again, primarily in student housing. That it's student housing. Yeah, I drive by these sites now. And I look up, and you know, they're still growing in height, and you know, you do wonder, is you know, hopefully these projects will succeed, but that is a question mark. And you know, the downtown is, you know, in so many ways, I think it's the engine that'll lead the city back to prosperity. And so, you know, needless to say, we all want these projects to succeed, and which is, if I can segue, you know, which is another reason why I think, you know, just the city, with its various financial pressures over the years, there have been more instances of the city looking to the DDA to solve its problems. And I mean, that's not necessarily been unexpected, but I just think that's not a good long-term strategy. Right.
I'm wondering what you think of the housing, considering that Borders went, and you know, Liberty Street has empties, and the near neighborhood. This, you know, there was a big brouhaha, really, and still is, about Fifth Avenue, and what your thoughts are about it.
Well, I have an opportunity to serve as a board member on the International Downtown Association, and have an opportunity as a result to be in conversation with downtowns across the country. So my perspective has a little foot outside the city of Ann Arbor and what's going on around us, around the country. And what I've understood is, over the last meltdown of the housing market since '08, what has been sorting out is a lot of what's been happening with the foreclosures have been in outside the core areas, what we were looking at as sort of the sprawling communities. At the same time that was going on, the numbers of residents in the core areas has been increasing in incredible numbers, even during the downturn. And I think we saw the same thing in Ann Arbor. In our office, we benchmarked the number of residents in the downtown in the last decade, and we've gained well over 30% more residents. We're well over 4,000 people out of 114,000 people live in the DDA district proper. That's not including the dense neighborhoods near us. And I think that what we're seeing is a transition, and it's hard to anticipate where it's going to go. But there is demand for, I think there's a pent-up demand to live in that core downtown. Very briefly, I saw a presentation by Professor Chris Lineberger, who presented as part of the Concentrate series. And he talked about the power of television to describe what's going on. And we reflected back to the 50s when Desi and Lucy wanted nothing more than a house out in the country. And then he contrasted that with the Friends, the TV show Friends, where they're living in New York City and boy, they stay unmarried into their 30s. And he said, that's the reflection that I'd like you to think about. That's what the core area is. This new world doesn't want to live out in the burbs like their parents did. They want this pent-up demand is for that core area experience. So I'm actually very optimistic. I look at those buildings and I think there's a whole wave of people that will be in that core area, shaping the new businesses, giving life to that sidewalk activity we all love, that we ourselves didn't grow up with that. We can't imagine how that experience, that's what they're looking for. Isn't what we grew up with, but that's what they're going to be given.
Right. Does anyone have any further?
I
No?
think Susan's-
Okay.
I'll just add, I'm
yes,
one of
please
those
do.
people.
One of those
that's-
downtown
I'm looking at-
residents.
I'm one of
yeah.
those downtown residents she's talking about there.
Okay.
Your
Right.
net age
But
demographic.
you're,
So she's onto something.
you're beyond college. So, that's a little different than all the buildings, Zaragoza 1, Zaragoza 2, that bring in students who come and go.
And that's why I
Yes.
mentioned the importance of the project that Susan and the DDA are taking on, which is the master planning of these significant sections of real estate in the downtown that are in prime locations, next to the library, across from the Blake Transit Center that's
Right.
going to be redeveloped, on top of a new underground parking structure that is going to bring 700 parking spaces online in the spring.
Right.
And these are all things that lead to what, if we want people to live downtown, we probably should have jobs for them down there. And do we need major office,
Right.
more retail, restaurants, or do we need an anchor company like
Right.
another Google? And I
Right.
think those are the discussions that as Susan goes out to the community and seeks public input. We'll find out what the community wants, what the community can support, and there'll be
Right.
some significant discussions in 2012 about what we
Yes.
put on these city properties.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how much of the community is involved in that, because that is a concern that the powers that be will make these decisions and not give the community a chance to be involved. And
Well, if we do it right, I mean, one of the pieces of this that I think is different is rather than writing an RFP and then finding out what the developers say and then we react to it, our job is to go out to our community before we ever put out another RFP and get that kind of content. The market isn't out there right now to
Right.
get these pieces for sale. It's a great opportunity to ask ourselves, just as Ryan said, what do we want? And I'm looking forward to hearing from everybody that diversity of voices. I think it's
Right.
important that we hear from ourselves.
right, because I think, from the scuttlebutt that I hear, that citizens really want to participate and not just the people on committees. I think that will be an important part of the piece, the puzzle that's put together. Jane, you didn't have a chance to bring up an issue.
An issue. There's so many, as a newbie here on
Yes.
council, this just into it a little over a month, and there have been so many significant issues.
Right.
But I guess, when I hear Susan and Ryan again talk about AATA, yeah, that's been out there, it's been looked at for a long time. So this four-party partnership, yeah, I mean, to me, it's like it materialized overnight in a lot of ways. And yeah, Greenbelt expansion and the pedestrian ordinance and funding for public art, big issues that the community has been very, has been very interested in
Yes.
and has had lots of opinions on.
Yes.
So yeah, those are. It seems like all of these things have been percolating to the forefront in a very fast-forward fashion.
Right.
But just issues in general. Yeah, I mean, we're getting into budget season, and I actually was glad that got a little reprieve. There's not going to be a budget retreat. and this is year 2 of the
Right.
2-year approved budget. But still, always I think the high priority for city and council is to ensure that there is, on financial matters, alignment of spending priorities between the residents and elected officials. And I'm not just in, campaigning, going door to door,
Yes.
listening to folks. I'm not sure that we've had that kind of alignment.
Right, it's
And-
interesting that no one has brought up, the budget and the police fire cuts, which were huge.
Yeah.
You were going to bring that up? Yes. You want to say something quickly about?
Sure.
Please.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the council's probably spent a disproportionate amount of time talking about a $160,000 cut to public art when they're dealing with multi-million-dollar budget deficits, and the total budget is over $300 million. It's we're talking a fraction of a fraction of a fraction, and I mean, we're seeing deep cuts for many, many years to the police and fire departments, and Jane did a good job of laying out the stats on that on our website during the campaign. And just to recap, we've seen our full-time employee counts in the police department go from 244 in 2001 down to 164 now. That's a 33% reduction, or 80 employees. In the fire department, we've seen it go from 131 to 82. That's a 37% reduction, or 49 employees. And more cuts are on the horizon next year, at least under the 2-year plan that is tentatively approved by council. But you're hearing the mayor and other council members now say, well, maybe we need to rethink that. Maybe we need to, stave off those cuts and maybe reverse some of the cuts we've previously made. And I think there's going to be some significant
Right.
discussion around that in
I
the
think-
next,
right.
6 months.
Right, the 911 dispatch. The claim is that because they're going to lose them, to the sheriff's department, that they might be able to, the police department might be able to hire some back, because cut to the bone is what has been said. And once again, to reflect what the citizens feel that, give value. And although I think, to speak perhaps the citizens, the percent for art doesn't go to police and fire, but you're taking from water, you're taking from roads, you're taking from other projects, and then upping the fees that are charged. So I think it's a matter of priorities that people are questioning. What are the priorities?
Yeah. And folks are tired of
Yes.
hearing about the buckets. And,
Yes.
And that, and that's the percent for art is a bucket council created. And yes, I mean, there's certain things that, you can't shift around,
Right.
voter approved millages,
Right.
and there are dedicated funds,
Right.
but there are certainly things, few years back, the whole solid waste department was moved out of the general
Right.
fund, and that was a council maneuver. So, so there are ways, I think, to increase flexibility and so that, again, these budget priorities can be better aligned.
Right. Well, we're getting out of time, so I was going to ask you what you think, your predictions or speculation, what you think might be on the ballot in November. And since we have a little time, I'm going to do it as a poll, all right?
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you, and if I've left anything out that you think may be on, let me know. Public art funding, do you think that'll be on the ballot? Are we going to, that's been discussed so many times, you're all saying no? It's not going to be on the ballot, so that's a no. How about the...
I would be happy to present a resolution to put it on the ballot, but I think,
Do
yeah,
that,
I would
okay.
agree with the...
And what about the
No vote.
countywide safety millage? Apparently, Fire Chief Hubbard sees a countywide effort in our future. Do you think we're ready to have that on the ballot in November? Countywide safety millage. Is that again a
I
no?
think we're working toward it, and certainly this consolidated dispatch center is a good first step. I
Right.
don't know if we're quite ready for it, but I think it's definitely going to be a topic of discussion at a near future opportunity.
Okay. And the countywide transportation that you were all talking about, if I understood correctly, Councilman Taylor wants a vote of the people before we transfer our funds and assets, because we have not opted out. We've opted in. So if the powers that be that say we're in, even if we don't pass the millage. And I gather that Councilman Taylor is saying, so I just need a yes or a no. Do you think that the county-wide transportation question will be up for approval on November, in the November ballot.
I don't know what their time frame is.
Oh,
I'm so-
okay.
And I think I spoke to that a little bit earlier, and Michael Ford, the CEO, said it would be optimistic for them to have it on the November ballot in 2012.
Okay.
And I take that as a no.
Yeah,
I
they
don't
don't
mean
have a
to. I
funding-
don't mean to
they don't have
cut
a
you
funding
short,
plan
but
yet, so.
we're running out of time, and we could do another half hour. And I want to thank you, Susan and Jane and Ryan, for sharing your insights. It's been a pleasure, and it's gone so quickly. And I want to acknowledge all the sources referenced for background information for this program. That's the Ann Arbor Chronicle, the AnnArbor.com, Ann Arbor Observer, Michigan Daily, 2 important blogs, A2 Politico, Local in Ann Arbor, and on YouTube, the Ann Arbor Newshawks. And of course, thank you, our viewers, for watching. Write to us. We'd love to hear your thoughts, your opinions, your suggestions. You know, we always welcome other perspectives. See you next time. Bye for now.